Well, good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar. This is a basic introduction to the new online Lutheran Service Builder. My name is Peter Frank and I'll be leading our session today. I'm the Senior Manager of Marketing for Church Supplies here at Concordia Publishing House. You can see my contact information on the screen. Please feel free to reach out at any time. Email is the best way to get a hold of me, but I put my office number as well. That'll take you right to my phone here where right now I have it forwarding to voicemail. So please don't try calling right now. You're not going to get through. But I do thank you for joining me today. I'm very excited to present this. This is our first training session ever on the new Lutheran Service Builder. We've done a number of other trainings on Lutheran Service Builder 2, or how to convert from Lutheran Service 2 to the Service Builder 2 to the new online version. This will be the first one where we entirely cover the new version. We're kind of going to go from the ground up. So thank you for joining me. I, like all of you, am pretty new to the new Service Builder. We haven't had it out that long. So please bear with me if I have to search around for a minute. I've been working with the team for the last 2 years as we've developed this, and they've been working on it longer than I have. So this is a long time in coming, but I'm excited to share it with you today. A few housekeeping items before we begin. First off, I've got about 50 minutes planned for presentation. Now, I tend to go over that. I apologize in advance if I do, but all that's doing is cutting into our question and answer time. Now, I know how important getting your questions answered is, and so one of my colleagues is on the line to answer those questions in the chat. We're going to try that out in just a few moments. But I'm planning about 10 minutes at the very end to cover all those questions, and if we have more than enough time, I'll read through some of the answers that we shared as they were answered during the presentation. Now, because of that, I'd like you to ask questions as you're thinking about them. Ask questions throughout the presentation. I'll have a queue here and it'll let me know how many we have. So if we've got a lot, then I'll make sure to spare as much time at the end as I can for them. And if we don't have many, well, then I'll just keep going and sharing more information. Now, we are going to be recording this webinar, or I should say we are recording this webinar. So if you are watching after the fact, I'm sorry you couldn't be here, but I thank you for joining us with the recording. You are welcome to ask questions as well. You'll just have to go a different route, either through the application or through our email. All right, so let me say first, for those of you who are not familiar with Lutheran Service Builder, let me explain what it is. It is a web-based program that allows churches to quickly and easily plan services, create custom bulletin interiors, export presentations and playlists, and also conform with copyright requirements. Now, I know that last part may not be super exciting, but it is very important and can be a time-consuming process. And that is done throughout the whole application as you work in it. So it's really a fantastic tool. It's been used by congregations in one form or another since 2006. Now, this is our third version of it. We are not calling it Lutheran Service Builder 3 because we're just going to continue to improve it. We don't foresee another version coming out. We're just going to proactively improve it as we go. Now, Lutheran Service Builder 2 will continue to be supported, and I know many of you are coming to us from that version. So even though you'll be experienced with it, we're going to be starting from the ground up in today's training. So what are some of the advantages to moving online? Lutheran Service Builder 2 is a PC-based application. Well, first off, this allows us to be multiple platforms, so we can welcome our Mac users. I know you've been waiting very patiently for many years to be able to use Lutheran Service Builder on your Macs without the benefit of a parallel or something complicated like that. So we are glad that you are able to join us, but that also means that you can have multiple devices. It could be on any laptop disconnected from the church's server. It could be on tablets. There's even aspects of it that are available on your phone. So it allows you to really utilize Lutheran Service Builder whenever is convenient for you and in the most convenient way. So we'll look at a few of those things as we go, and I'll kind of call out the things that are only on mobile. All right, or I should say that mobile only has access to. You can't access everything on your phone because it's just not practical to be doing word processing on your phone. All right, so it also allows you to invite other users to work together with you as you plan your services. So maybe you're a pastor and the church music director helps choose the hymns, and the church administrative assistant kind of finalizes the format. Rather than passing one file back and forth, you can work together on the same service and then export at the end. So that's another new feature or a new advantage to moving online. It also allows us to leverage different web functionalities, and you'll see that a lot through the interface, but it also means that we can update it automatically. So like I said before, where we don't plan another version of Builder, we're just going to continually improve this. You'll receive those improvements as soon as they're ready. You don't have to install anything on your own or wait for a disk to arrive or get your IT person to come and update it because you don't have the right permissions. Now it'll update automatically when we push it out, and you'll be able to take advantage of it right away. Now, before every webinar, I make some assumptions about who will be attending, and that helps me kind of fill out my outline. I've got my outline up here on my other monitor. This allows me to kind of focus the presentation for a specific group of people. So here's who I focused this presentation for. I'm assuming that you who are here today understand the basics of the liturgy. You don't have to be an expert in Lutheran worship, but you have to at least be familiar with it, understand some of the key principles, how it works. I'm not going to go into much detail on the different parts of worship today, other than how Lutheran Service Builder helps you add them to your service. So that's just kind of a precursor to everything else. You should know the basics of the liturgy. But I'm also assuming you're completely new to the online Lutheran Service Builder. And this is a very safe assumption because it's only been out for a little over a week. Actually, I think it was 1 week ago today that we launched it. So that's a pretty safe assumption. But wrapped into that assumption, I'm not necessarily assuming that you are an expert at Lutheran Service Builder too. You could be brand new to Lutheran Service Builder as a whole, having never used it before, and this presentation will be for you. So that means that we're going to be starting at the ground level and working our way up. We're not going to go real detailed because we only have so much time today, but we are going to start at the very basics. I'm also assuming that you who are here today have access to Lutheran Service Builder so you can follow along from home. Now, whether that is through a paid subscription or a free trial, that doesn't matter as much. The free trial gives you access to almost all of the tools, with the exception of exporting, because that starts to get into copyrights, which is what most of the subscription pays for, is the copyrights. So if you don't already have a free trial of the new Lutheran Service Builder, you can start that right now. Go to lutheranservicebuilder.com and go look for the free trial button. So I'll give you a second to do that. We're going to ask some questions of the audience. If you have not started your free trial or have no access to it, go ahead and do that now while I ask these next questions, because I think it'll be helpful to follow along as we go. All right, so while those people are doing that, let me ask you to tell me a little bit about yourself. Now, this is the part where I really want to hear from everybody because it'll help me know who's here and who's engaged. So the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is to find the question box. And if you were here in advance of the webinar, you helped me out by testing my audio. That's what I'd like you to do now, is to go in the same place. But instead of telling me you can hear me, I'd love to hear your first name and where you're watching this from. So just city and state. You don't have to put your whole church name in. That might take too long to type in, but just your first name and your city and state. And that'll let me see who's here. And it'll help me know that you all know where to ask those questions. All right, they're starting to come in. So we have Judy from Alabama and John from Wausau, Wisconsin, and it's going too fast now. Good. Lots of people who are here. Bob from Minnesota, Holly from Washington, Christy from Wyoming, Vicky from Wisconsin, Penny is here, Corey and Lynn from South Dakota, Amy from Texas. Oh man, we got a long list today. So there's a Frank from Washington. That's a very good name. That's my last name, not my first name. Mary from Texas, Robert from Alabama, Carl in Fort Wayne, but Zion Lutheran, there we go, and in Ohio, Kevin from Minnesota. There's more that I missed, so thank you very much for putting that in here. That lets me know that you know where to ask questions, and so as we're going through, right where you put your name, that's where you can put questions. Now, that'll be a little bit different than this next thing. This next thing just really helps me understand what your role in the church is. So let me launch this poll. And it's going to ask you to select the primary role at church. Now, I know most people, whether you are a called church worker or a volunteer, wear many hats. just let me know what your primary role is. Which one best describes you? That'll give me an idea of who is here today. And it's been kind of interesting to see as I've done these Lutheran Service Builder webinars, who is coming to these. It's different than I thought. And actually today is probably more in line with what I expected, because we've got about half as administrators, and we've got a good number of pastors, about a third, and then the others are split between church musicians and others. So we are almost all the way through. But if you haven't voted yet, go ahead and click the button next to the one that best describes you. I think that's how it is. Your view is different than mine. All right, so we are most of the way there. So I'm going to go ahead and close that poll now, and I can share the results just so that you've got an idea. Let me make sure. There we go. So about 31% are ordained pastors, 48% administrators, 6% church musicians, 2% called workers, and 13% other. For those of you who marked other, if you want to put what role in the church you have in the chat, that'll help me get a better understanding of who's here as well. All right, the next one I'm going to ask is, are you currently using Lutheran Service Builder in your congregation? Now, this could be Lutheran Service Builder 2, this could be the new online version, either one. So I will launch that poll, and this will be the last one that we do because we got a lot of material to cover. But are you currently using Lutheran Service Builder, any of the different versions? And it looks like the vast majority are. Very good. All right, well, that helps too. We've got some who are here who are brand new to it, but for the most part, everybody's been using it. So very good. All right, let's move forward. Thank you very much for answering those. All right, yep, and we've got some who are coming in, elders, Robertson Elder, and Carl says, yes, they're using it, but barely know it, so fantastic. This will be helpful to you. So here's the outline for today. My plan is to plan a service. Then we're going to select the different elements, and I'll show you the difference. Planning the service is really the top level of decision making, and then really as we get into the select the elements, that's where the service takes shape. Then we're going to edit the formatting, show how to save that formatting for another time, to reuse it, keep things consistent, and finally I'll show you how to export it. So the first three things everybody can follow along with, regardless of whether you are a paying customer or a free trial. The last one, only paying customers can follow along with. And I know for some of you, you have not yet officially converted over. You're learning this, kind of trying to decide if you want to move online. So you won't be able to do that yet either until you speak with a software consultant and get your subscription moved over. But I'll give you instructions on that at the very end as well. So let's, without further ado, get started. So I'm going to switch my screens here. Oops, there we go. And actually, I'm going to start off on our homepage here. This is our new Lutheran Service Builder homepage. And you can see right here, there's that Start Free Trial button. So if you missed it when you went there, that's okay. Now, when you click Start Free Trial, it'll actually just take you to this page, which looks like a calendar. Oh, actually, sorry, that takes you to the sign-on page. If you X out of that, you'll see the calendar. There we go. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and sign in and log into my account. Now, for me, the first thing that I see here is to select an account. And that's one of the things that's very different, is that one user can be in multiple accounts. So we have recently discontinued lutherancalendar.org, and not really discontinued it as much as moved it into Lutheran Service Builder. So if you already have a Lutheran Calendar account, that might show up here. And then you can also add your church account. So if you see that, have no fear, there's nothing wrong. You just have access to multiple accounts and you pick the one that you want to use. And for today, I'm going to use this top one, Resurrection Lutheran Church. And now this will take me to the official calendar view. And you can see there it's August 2018. And throughout the calendar, there are different days in the church year that are called out. Every Sunday, of course, has a day in the church year, and then there's special occasions throughout that might be observed. So we're going to be working with Pentecost 13, or the 13th Sunday after Pentecost, which is this upcoming August 19th. So when I click on that, the first thing it does is it takes me to what is called the Propers view. Now that's very different than what it used to be where we'd start planning the service. This is meant to be a tool for you where you can go ahead and look at the propers in advance, and this works great on your phone. So wherever you are, if you're sitting in line at Starbucks and you're wondering, all right, I should start prepping for my sermon, what are the readings for this week? You can go there and start scrolling through and start giving it some thought. So you see the propers are all listed there in their entirety. Now, what I want to do next is go up the very top in the top right corner and begin to plan the service. Now, this is done so that you can plan services at a high level as far out in the future as you want to go. Now, I'm sure we don't have many pastors who are going years into the future. Hopefully, we have some who are going months into the future. Generally, it's weeks. Sometimes, if you are the only person on staff, all you can do is 1 week after the next, and that's okay too. But you can go ahead and hit plan the service and begin planning it. And that's really that first step of going from this idea of Lutheran calendar or the propers and into getting ready to prepare a service for either exporting in bulletin format or presentation. We'll also take a look at audio too. But this takes you into what we call the service plan. The service plan is just that. It's a plan. It doesn't necessarily have to happen this way. It won't necessarily happen that way depending on what changes you make. But it gives you a really good starting point and allows you to kind of put the bones in place, or put the studs if we want to use the building a house analogy. So you start building that structure and then you can fill it out from there. So the first thing that you can do is choose the readings. Now the readings are assigned by the lectionary, and that is assigned in your settings. We'll take a look at that later on. Most of our churches use the 3-year lectionary, although there seems to be a growing number that are using the 1 year. Either way, you can use Lutheran Service Builder. This I have set to the 3-year. So there are the readings: Joshua, Psalms, Ephesians, and John. And when I click on one of those readings, I can see over here on the right hand my search bar, where I can then choose to select something else. So maybe I don't want both of those. It's Joshua 24, 1-2 and 14-18. I could always just type in Joshua 24, 1-2 and click enter, and that will change it to just those verses. Now, if I want to see what those are, there's a little button up at the top right, and this will become very familiar to you. It's kind of hidden. It's not real noticeable. We've received some feedback. I didn't even know that was there. Well, today, now you do. And once you learn it's there, you won't easily forget it. And so you can just click this button and it pulls everything into the screen and you can see that reading. Now, maybe you did want to go back and see what 14-18 was. All you have to do is click on that and that'll fill that out again. So that's how you use the service planning search tool. There's a master search tool that we'll take a look at later on as well, and the concepts will be almost identical. Now, if you want to reset your search, and let's just say you want to go to Genesis 1. That's an easy way to go. You can type that in, and now you can see Genesis 1, the first chapter of the Bible. And you could narrow it down again and say, 1-2, and put that in, and it'll shrink it. So that gives you a lot of flexibility in choosing your readings. And then you can either hit the X in the top right, or you can hit that preview button again to collapse it and get back to your service plan. Now, if you want to delete a reading, maybe you are not going to do the Psalms, you could just click this X next to it and it clears it out. And if you want to add another reading, you click the button that says add reading, or the little text link, I should say. Now we'll clear out the search. This little arrow to the left of your search criteria, when you click it, it just clears everything. And so you can see now that the next, these are the suggested readings for this day in the church year. I can go in and add Psalms back in. So that's how you choose readings. And those concepts will be very similar for any other kinds of search. All right, let's go to hymns, because that's where a lot of the searching occurs. Oh, before I go too far, I did want to clarify that the order in which you put your readings does not matter. it will attempt to assign it to the right place. In general, people will leave the readings as is. But if you're adding a different reading, it's going to be part of your service plan. It won't necessarily get plugged in because we don't always know where you intend to have it go. So I'll show you that in a few moments. Same thing with hymns, and hymns makes a little bit more sense. When you go to add hymns, all you're doing is selecting hymns from a list. So I'll just add a few hymns there and just add the first couple of them. And of course, I'll add the hymn of the day. All right, as you're adding hymns, you can see there's 3 different categories. There is the hymn of the day, which is a proper, hymns for the readings, which is based on these readings, and then other suggested hymns that might fit the theme of the service. So they might not directly be, or may not be directly tied to the readings, but they're related, and you can see those. So it gives you a lot of different choices. Now, if you go to the right of it, right now I have a bunch of NA. When I click on it, it says last used NA before this service. That is your statistics view. And once you start adding in hymns, or maybe if you brought in your old database, you have already used hymns, it'll give you some statistical data on that, like how many times it's been used or the last time it's been used. Now, just like with readings, you can click on the preview and it'll slide in from the right, show you the text. You can click the melody button. And you can see there, that's what it looks like with the melody. You can also preview that by hitting that play button right there. Now, I don't think the audio is going to come across. Yeah, it doesn't look like that. All right, stop that. And then you can click on info and see more. So each one of these hymns, as you click on it, the preview changes. Now, what I want to show you within the info is that all of the lines that are blue will generate searches to find more hymns with that same kind of criteria. So for example, if you are wanting to look for something for praise and adoration, related topics, we'll click on that and all praise and adoration hymns will show up. Now you can see up in the top left that it has put in topic : double quotes, praise and adoration, and it ends with the double quotes. Now, oops. I have my screen zoomed in. Yeah, there you go. So you can't see the entire thing, but that's okay. It gives you an idea. And that's one of the things that I really like about these links is that when you click on it, it gives you an idea of how to search, kind of a mini lesson, because it puts that search criteria up in the search bar. So if you want to know, well, how do I get all hymns around Psalm 25 or 20 verse 5? Click on that and it'll pull it up. Now, if, so results for hymns, there you go. You also have some other things like hashtag hymns, Psalm 20 verse 5. That'll take you to the same thing. Now, we'll get back there in a little while, but search is a very powerful tool. What I really just want to emphasize is that once you find a hymn, you can get as much information as possibly anywhere else on that hymn between the text, the melody, and all of that info. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close out of this. And I've got my 4 hymns selected. I could add 5, I could add 6. The number doesn't matter as much. All it's doing is putting together a plan for me. That doesn't mean that it's assigning the hymns anywhere. Hymns don't necessarily have the right or wrong spot. There are definitely hymns that are more appropriate for the beginning and the end of the service and for different purposes within. But we're just going to select those for right now. The next spot here is order of service. Now, it says empty, and when I click on it, you can see that I have a number of options on the right-hand side. These are all from Lutheran Service Book, and I'm guessing you're probably pretty familiar with them. We'll do trainings later on that go into the details of each one of these, but we're really going to just focus on the fact that you have options. So you have your divine services, your daily office, other services like the service of prayer and preaching, seasonal prayer rites, daily prayer for individuals and family. The list continues to go on. But I'm going to just select divine service setting 1 and say we are going to use this divine service right straight from the hymnal, and we'll fill in the gaps based on this week's service. Now, below that is additional rights, and after that is notes. And you may think, well, what are those for during the service? Certainly additional rights can make sense, but I don't have a right every single service. Well, again, this is a service plan. This is not your service. Even though it looks like you might be missing a right, there may not be the need for a right. But if you were to add a right, if you clicked additional rights, add right, you would get the list of available rights. So maybe you know there's a baptism coming. You can just click Holy Baptism, and it'll kind of keep that note there. Again, this is high-level service planning, looking ahead at the coming weeks, just so you have an idea of what's going on. Now, anything that you can't keep in one of those above 4 sections, put in the notes. We talked about adding all sorts of different fields, like who's preaching, who's the liturgist, but that doesn't really do anything else in the software other than inform. So we just put a notes field in there to say, all right, Pastor Smith is preaching, something like that. It doesn't affect the service, it's just for your own benefit. All right, well, that is it. Oops, I have my microphone in the way, so I'm having trouble seeing it. All right, that is it for the initial service plan. If you have any questions, go ahead and put them into the queue. It looks like a lot of people are taking advantage of that. So thank you very much. And again, thank you to Tim for answering those questions. All right. Next up, we are going to move from planning the service to actually preparing it for export. So we're going to start off with preparing the bulletin. Now, this might be a little hidden, and we've heard that from several people that I didn't know where to click next. Well, again, once you learn this, it's hard to forget. So when you're on the service plan, or even when you're on the propers, it doesn't have to be the service plan, you can go to the top right corner of the white section and click Prepare Bulletin. And this will change your view, and it may take a second for it to show, depending on what else you got going on, like if you're streaming a webinar. There we go. There is our bulletin preparation. So you can see there's a lot happening within the main part of the screen, not a lot happening at the top. That was very intentional. We wanted to put the entire focus on the service itself, as opposed to all of the different options that you can do. So let me talk through how the screen has changed. In the top left, you now have a undo and redo button because things auto-save as you go. So if I make a change to the service at all, I don't have to hit a save button anymore. It automatically saves it. And if I want to go back, that's what the back button is for. And maybe I went back too far and I need to go forward one, that's what the forward button is for. Then you have things related to the document, and then you have an insert tab. And that's pretty much it for this view. Those are the main options. Now, certainly under each option, there are several sub-options, but these are not used often. So for example, underneath document, you have bulletin format. That just tells you what does the service folder look like. We'll get into that in a little while. Then you have the order of service, which we've already chosen. Now you can make changes to the order of service and save it as a copy. You can't actually save it to the divine service. That's kind of out of the box, it stays the same. Then to the right of that, you have insert, and you've got a number of things you can insert throughout. We'll look at that in just a little while. To the far right, you have 13th Sunday after Pentecost and a drop down where you can toggle between these main screens. So you can go to propers, service plan, prepare bulletin, or where we're going next, prepare presentation or prepare playlist, and then your settings tab. So that's all you have from an option. So we tried to keep it really clean that way. All right, let's take a look at the service itself. So it comes across with some interesting styling. You see that this styling is already in place, and this probably is familiar to you from if you've used Lutheran Service Builder 2 before, which most of our attendees here today have. But what's different about this is the structure. It's used to be a little outline where you can then go and pick things, and now it is all inline. So you can see there it starts off with the service of confession absolution, moves into the hymn of invocation, and so on and so on. Now when I'm on document, I don't see all those lines because I was on insert, which allows me to insert anything from up here, whether it's a rubric, a heading, a caption, a hymn, reading, prayer, proper, element, or right. So let's not add anything quite yet. I want to get into the basics of service editing. So confession absolution is the header. When I click on it, or heading, I apologize, confession absolution, I can go and double click on it and start typing. We'll just call extra. That may not be, oh, I can't even type. Wow. There you go, extra. So in case you need extra confession and absolution, well, we can never have enough forgiveness of sins because of our sinful nature, but that's probably not appropriate for service. I just wanted to show you how easy it is to change those headings. All right, then we've got rubric here, which is meant to be red, but this default style is meant for black and white printers. Now we've got hymn of invocation. And when I click on that, I go right back to that search screen, but it's different this time. You see, we have created a service plan. And so my hymns are available at the very top of my search. I don't have to choose them. I can choose something else entirely. But it makes sense that if I planned for it, I would use those, and so they show up top. Now, when I hover over it, it shows me where that same one is on the list below. And that allows you to see, okay, did I get this from the hymn of the day? Did I get this from another source? Where did that come from? Where did that suggestion come from? So that's what that structure is for. Otherwise, the rest of it is just what you saw before when you were doing your service plan. So I'll select the first hymn, and it plops it in there. Pop is probably not the best word for that. It puts it in there. There you go. So you can see that I have the whole hymn in place, all 5 stanzas of it, but I actually kind of wanted to see the melody. So I'm going to go up to the top left here, which has now changed. There's a 3rd tab. This is my element tab, and this will change depending on which element I select. So if I change it to melody, there is my melody, and you'll see all 5 stanzas fit in. If I change it to none, it will show me just the title of the hymn. Now, I also have the option to add a subcaption, and so it defaults to like put in the stanzas. Well, there's nothing there for stanzas right now because we're doing all 5 stanzas, but maybe I only want to do 1, 2, 4, and 5 and take out 3. As soon as I take out 3, that gets updated to stanzas 1, 2, 4, and 5. Now, if I go back to the melody, you can see stanza 3 has also been removed from there. So it keeps it consistent. It really becomes just kind of a formatting rather than a selection because we've already selected the hymns. Now we're just showing how it looks. All right, let's keep going down. Sometimes you'll see this blue bar here. If I click the drop down, I can see another option. Now, in this case, you can't see too much because Lutheran Service Builder doesn't show the captions. So if I go over here, and I click on that and I click captions, I can see what it is. And then I'll go here and click caption. So I can choose between absolution and declaration of grace. Many of you will already know that just based by its nature, but it's always good to call it out. Now you might be asking, why would you do absolution in some cases and declaration of grace in another? Well, the main reason is if you have somebody who is leading worship that is not an ordained pastor, they are not speaking on behalf of Christ, so they can only declare God's grace as given in Scripture, as opposed to say, by His authority, I therefore forgive you all your sins. So, little theology in there for you. All right, but really the key part is these blue lines provide options, and I can open and close them and select the element and then close it again. All right, next we have service of the word. So this goes into the second part. That was service of confession and absolution. You can see that there. Now we get into service of the word. So we're not going to go through this in all this detail because there's a lot still to cover, but you have more things like this that are less about style and more about what type of information do you want to put in there. You can, let's see here. If we click on, for example, the Kyrie, which was always protected, I can change that to, oh, sorry, protected. It was always the same thing. There's not options there. I can change that to melody and show what that looks like. I can also choose none and show none of it and just reference it as part of the hymnal. I'm going to show the melody. All right. Well, as we go down, let's look for, here's another example, Psalms. Now, Psalms have the chant pointing in them by default with this formatting, but maybe you don't do chanting, maybe you just read it. You can go to pointing and turn it off. You can change the psalm tone and have that put in there. So the psalm tone and the pointing, kind of want to do those two together. That works best. But then you also have this new thing called templates. And this doesn't work with all elements, but most common elements, where you can surround your elements with something. So for example, this is the word of the Lord, thanks be to God. If I selected that one while on Psalm, it'll add that to the very bottom. That's pretty clever. That's one of those new features that are cool. They don't necessarily make a big billboard announcement, but they certainly save time. And with My Worship resources, you can create your own. All right, well, I'm going to keep going because we've got more to cover, but I want to just show you that as you went down, you get to change how it looks. And so you always see it exactly how it appears. In the same way, the presentation view does that. All right, let's go here to presentation. While that does this, I'm going to take a drink. Now, the presentation view obviously is a little bit more graphic intensive. If I click on this first slide, you can see what it looks like. You can also see that my search still comes up, because what I was doing before by having my service folder all in one spot was basically giving me my plan coming to fruition. That's what this is too, but it's a different experience. You see, whereas before it was this continuous document, these are known automatically are going, but I shouldn't say it like that. These by their nature are going to be individual slides, which means they can't flow in the same way that a book does or a bulletin. So you can see here, here's our first hymn. We've got stanzas 1, 2, 4, and 5. Now, I can still do all the other things that I could do on the bulletin view. I could change it to text, and it'll still split them up. I can change the number of stanzas, and it'll still split them up. You can even click none, and it doesn't split them up at all because they're not to be seen. They're none. So just know that the presentation view slices your slides according to what it thinks is best. Now, as you go through, you'll see some familiar things. For example, these blue bars. You can expand that to see your different options. That doesn't mean you have to choose one of the options. Look at it critically and decide what is best, but that's how you would select it. And so you're not starting from scratch. You're not starting from building the bulletin and then figuring out how to convert it into into this digital presentation view. You're just selecting the elements that need to be going into the system, to the service. All right, let's see, where are we at on time? We've got a few minutes left. I've got 10 or 12 minutes to be exact. All right, let me go back to prepare bulletins. I'll switch over there. All right, let's say I wanted to add a hymn. Maybe I want something to open with something. If I go here to insert, all of a sudden I get these gray lines on the screen. These lines are paragraph breaks or element breaks. These would be an ideal place to put a hymn, somewhere where it doesn't actually interfere with the individual element, but also isn't just hanging out there. So let's see here. If I go here to insert hymn, now when I hover over this, it turns blue, and I click hymn, and then I can take something from my service plan. So this has a lot of different verses, and one that I'm particularly excited to show you. This has the Trinity symbol because in that stanza, every person of the Trinity is worshipped. So that indicates to most churches, some don't follow this kind of a tradition, but on that last verse, everybody rises. So that was a common complaint in previous versions of Builder that we did not have that option. So we made sure to include it in this new online version. All right, I think I could probably go on some more, but we're already 40 minutes in, so I want to show the service formats. All right, let's see. I'm going to go up to settings and go to bulletin formats. There we go. All right, bulletin formats. There are 3 right now. These are all out of the box. Bulletin formats chooses how it's displayed, or allows you to choose how your bulletin is displayed. So for example, the default, which comes for every Lutheran Service Builder customer, looks like this. Pretty familiar, right? Creative Worship looks like this, and large print looks like this. If I X out of here, whoops. There we go, I was just impatient. If I X out of here and I go to Documents, and I change my format to Creative Worship, and then I close out of this hymn, there we go. You can see that this is now in Arial. So there is the service in Arial, looking similar yet different. Now I can change this to large print, and boom, it grows. Now I may want to use bigger paper than what I originally planned, but it puts everything in a very easy to use large, or easy to read large print. I'm going to go back to default. I guess I don't have to, and I'm going to go back to bulletin formats. Let's talk about your options here. All right, so under default, I'm going to copy this format, and I'm going to just choose PAF default. That is my initials. All right, let's do some changes here. So this is, what did we call that before? That should be a caption. A heading is an even bigger thing, I believe. Let's see. Yeah, I was wrong. I'm still learning this. That is a heading. The bigger ones are headings. The next ones are captions. I apologize. Like I said, I'm still learning this. Some of the lingo does carry over. I just don't have it ingrained in my head. So then I can choose how that specific element looks. So in this case, I'm going to change it. And you'll see here I have a number of different fonts available to me. These fonts were mostly added to my computer. Some of them were out of the box with Windows, but a lot of them came from Google Fonts. And so we want to support having Google Fonts, and we're looking through different ways of doing that. All right, so let's say I want to change this to Lato. Now, this didn't necessarily come up, but I was able to search on it. Let me show you what that looks like when I search. When I start typing in something that doesn't come up, it says Chrome can't display a font named LTO, because I misspelled it. But it can show me one that's LATO. Now the way this works is it's looking at the fonts on your computer and validating that a font is there. It can't, because it's a web browser, explore your fonts and just return the results. It has to learn them as it goes. So if there's a font you want to use that is not on here, type it in. It should work, as long as it's on your computer. All right, so there's Lato, and I'm going to beef that up to 24, and I'm actually going to make that Lato black. Uh-oh, that one didn't work. All right, well, I'm not sure why that is. I probably mistyped something. But there, I'll just make it bold. So that looks different. Let's go next to the body. And we're going to call this one Open Songs. Oops, where did that go? There, okay. So there's my body copy. I'm going to go to size 11 font. I'm going to add a little bit of space before. Cut down on the space. We'll keep that one. Cut down on the indent. I can start changing how the whole appearance looks. Maybe I won't have as much space between there. All right, I'm gonna go back to then subcaptions, change that to open sans. Beef that up to 12. Oops, that's my subcaption. I meant to go to caption. So you can see I have a lot of different options on how to do stuff. And it's not, it requires some level of design. It's not entirely, I don't want to say intuitive. It is intuitive because it's like a word processor. It's not going to look great just because you put something in. You have to have some kind of eye for design, eye for consistency. Otherwise, it won't look perfect. But it gives you the flexibility to do what you want to do. You don't have to follow one of our themes. So if I go in and I'm going to change my rubrics to red, and I'm just going to save this. All right, so there's my PAF default font. When I go back, or sorry, default bulletin format. Oops, when I go back to my document and I click document and bulletin formatter and PAF default, all of it takes effect. So you can see all my changes are in there. It's starting to look like a pretty nice bulletin. Some things like the music won't change. Those are not actually text, they're images. So it can't update them with different fonts or different sizes or anything like that. But those can still stay in the service, and we try to keep as much as is consistent as possible for what your intentions are, knowing that some things can't change. All right, let's jump up here to prepare presentation. And this follows a similar thing. Sorry, I meant to go to presentation formats. So I'll click settings, presentation formats. There we go. So if I go to basic, you see what the basic looks like. We've already seen that. Iron looks different. Now this is where having it zoomed in kind of messes with it a little bit. Just know that this may flicker a little bit, but it's not dangerous. All right, so there, as we're going through that, I'm going to go to like heading. Whoops, caption. That's what I want to do. There you go. So you can see that some of it goes off of that. That doesn't mean that your hymns are going to go off of that, or your text is going to go off of that in your presentation. That just means in the preview of this presentation format, it's going to go off. So depending on how much you have in here, there's a lot of images going on. So like I said, it may kind of shake a little bit. It may go over. As you go and prepare your presentation, you'll want to double check those things because they should be split out. And we're going to look at ways to improve the preview as well. But let's go ahead and change the color. So I'm going to change this to, let's go to a dark blue. And then I'm going to go and change the body to a much more white color. And I'm going to change this to just Arial narrow. There you go. And I can change the caption also to Arial. I can center it. I can shrink it down. Also know that just because this title fits in doesn't mean every title will fit in. Some of them will be larger. And I'll make this white. So not a perfect one. I can also choose the size. I can choose the content. And that's a key part of this that I skipped over on the bulletin presentation point of it. You can choose how things are displayed. So like in here, all hymns, you may want to say melody. That's not great for a presentation view. It works really well for a bulletin. In fact, let's go ahead. We'll save that. I'll X out of here, and I'll go back to the bulletin. All right. And I see that I'm already running short of my time. We do have a number of questions in the queue that have not been answered yet. So let me just go into bulletin formats first, and then I'll show you. Where's my PAF default? I was so focused on the format, I forgot these other two, layout and content. Layout is where you choose the size of the paper that you export. So like here, I've got letter 8.5 by 11, portrait, and we're going to do folded. When we go to landscape, there we go, folded landscape, and maybe I want to do this under legal. All right, then I might want to, actually that spacing is pretty good. I can automatically scale my photos so that, and when I say photos, I mean music. In fact, it says music, good. I'll save that. We'll go to content. I can choose like all headings are visible or not. A lot of people don't use the headings because it kind of confuses those who are unfamiliar with Lutheran worship why there's different services within my service. But then you have the rubrics that you can show or hide. You have all your hymns. You can choose the caption format, so you could just say roll, hymn of invocation, or otherwise. All of your liturgy, if you want to have the music or the parts where applicable, you can choose that, and the list goes on. There's a lot of options there. I recommend you play around with it and see what it looks like. Try different versions, print them out, see what they look like once they're printed. This gives you the freedom to choose exactly how your service exports and how it looks. All right, so once you have your service kind of in good shape, what you're looking for. Let me close out of here. We're going to go back to Prepare Bulletin, and we're going to go to Document and click Export. Now you can export as a docx file, which is Microsoft Word, an RTF, which is rich text format, or an HTML file, which is a website. So if you're wanting to upload this to your website. Now it says here, subscribe to Lutheran Service Builder before you can export, which is funny because I thought my subscription here was that. It'll take me to that. I'll hit cancel. When I tested this before, now I think I may have been under a different account before. Let me go here. Sorry about that. Oh. Let's see. Of course that happens live. Select that account. It'll be a different service for the 19th, but I really want to just show you how easy it is to export. Once I have my bulletin prepared, export docx file. Oh, that one's not either. Well, shoot. I apologize for that. It's not too different. All it does is automatically downloads the file, pops out right in your browser so that you can go and use it. So again, I apologize that that wasn't ready to go. I tested it beforehand, it worked, but I must have been in a different account when I was testing it. I'll clean that up for our future webinars. But it works out where it's just a file that looks exactly like this, and then you can edit it from there. Now, as I glanced over, I see some questions related to that. The last thing I want to show before I get into the questions, though, is this Prepare playlist. And this is related to Concordia Organist. Now, Concordia Organist is basically a replacement or a supplement for your organist. And it allows you to extract files of all the music necessary for your service, provided that it's in Lutheran Service Book. So if you are adding hymns or otherwise, you can't expect them to be in here because they are not generated on the fly. These were professionally recorded by some very talented organists. And so when you go here, you can see exactly based on what you put in your service, which songs are available or hymns, what music is available. You can preview it if you'd like. It's not going to come across the audio. But then when you go to export it, you can export all the different MP3 files. So you can load it into whatever computer is connected to your sound system. You could put it on an iPod and play it. You can put it, iPod, I know that's very dated. You can put it on your phone and play it if you're going on a shut-in visit. You could even burn it to a disk if you still have CDs. So that's a fantastic tool for getting music out in a different way. There's an additional subscription price to that. If you're interested, I can talk more about that in a minute. But I'm well into my time, and I think I covered almost everything. There's a few little things that I didn't touch on, but I may touch on them in the question and answer time. So let me switch back to my presentation for just a moment. To remind you, you can start your free trial at LutheranServiceBuilder.com, even if you are a Lutheran Service Builder 2 customer. Start your free trial. We can either merge them later or they can be separate. But that is the very first step Once you have done that, when you are ready to move to the new version, when you're ready to convert, we're doing that through our software consultants through scheduled times. And I can paste this link in. In fact, I should have copied it to my clipboard to start, but let's do that. Ooh, let's see. That is fully formatted. Well, hopefully that comes across not fully formatted. Good. It was showing up in my screen as huge based on my PowerPoint. But you can go here to this link, sign up for a time with one of our software consultants, and this is kind of how the conversation will go. They'll send you a new license agreement. Depending on if you already have subscriptions, it may include aligned subscription dates. What that means is that they'll start and end at the same time. Many of our subscribers have like the hymn license and the Lutheran Service Builder license and Concordia Organist license, and they all start and end at different times. We're trying to get those all aligned. We'll turn on the access to the new builder, and we'll send you instructions on how to get started. A lot of it will be about converting from Lutheran Service Builder 2 to the online version, but some will be how to get started. All right. Finally, you can also ask them lots of questions and answers. They're meant to be 15-minute calls, so I shouldn't say lots, but you can ask the most important ones, and then our support team can help with everything else. So let me give my contact information one more time, as well as our software consultants. And while I do that, I'm going to take a quick look at the questions and see which ones are in the queue. Yeah, we've got a number waiting for me. All right, so Tim, thank you for answering so many of those. I will try my best to answer all of these. So, good. All right, so Chris is asking, why did Proverbs appear in some places but not others? That's probably, that was, yeah, quite early on. It depends on what the readings are for that day. Let me go ahead and log into my other account again. So as you're clicking through here, you might see that there are some that have Proverbs, some that don't. I'm not sure the exact reason, other than I know that the readings that show up are based on the lectionary. So if somebody else has a better answer to that, let me know and I'll share it. But I believe that's all it is just what those assigned readings are. I know that Proverbs are not assigned for every Sunday in the church year. All right, let's keep going through here. How do I import Let Us Pray LXBX files? That is Kurt. Kurt has already left, but you would bring in files through the settings and then import from LSBX file. That's something I haven't shown you. That can be a little bit on the higher level of skills, although we know there's a lot of use cases for that. That's how you bring in outside files. All right. Let's see. All right, I'm going to keep going down here. Some of them are response to answers, so I'm just reading through there as we go. Why are the distribution hymn 2 headings listed after the distribution is done? I always have to move those up. Not a big deal, but just seems weird placement. Judy, that's a good question. Let me show what you're talking about for everybody to see. So when you go here and to prepare bulletin, and we'll go down Divine Service setting 1. So here you go. You have distribution and distribution hymn right below that. Now, this is tough because these are things that happen simultaneously. And it's hard to show that in print. So we chose the placement after that because we know many people will remove these. So these are essentially rubrics that are explaining what will be said. They're not meant to be said by the entire congregation at the same time. In fact, these here are said by the communion assistants, and then this set is this is at the very end. But this distribution set, this grouping here, is all together. So it's hard to really put that in place. You can drag it up and put it in there if you want. Whoops. That can cause me to jump up. I'm not sure what happened there. So you can move the hymns into that, and that's okay. But more than anything, the reason that Builder does it that way is because the service book does it that way. And we follow the service book to a T. It's kind of the ultimate source for Builder. So that's what I know, is that it's all, the distribution is one set, and then the distribution hymns kind of go on during it. But of course, it's a preference for how to display that within the service folder. So I don't know anything more than that. So there may be more to it that our editors chose with Lutheran Service Book, but I do know that Lutheran Service Builder follows the service book. So I hope that helps, JD. All right, I'm going to keep going down here. Are all Google Fonts compatible with the PowerPoint presentation? Yes and no. That is a kind of a tricky question. Let me go up here into presentation formats. For those of you who are not familiar, this is from Lisa. For those of you who are not familiar, Google offers a number of free fonts. Now, we do not put all the Google fonts in there. In fact, I don't think we put many Google fonts in there. Let me explain a little bit about how fonts are showed up. What we do is we determine whether you're using a PC or Mac, and then provide a listing of fonts that are standard on PCs or standard on Macs. If you have fonts on your computer that are from other sources, you can type them in and it'll pull them in, like I was doing with Lato or Open Sans. I have those installed on my computer. I downloaded them from Google Fonts, but they don't show up here because our software, because it's in a web browser, can't examine your computer. It can't look and say, okay, what fonts are on there? So we kind of have to guess, and that's where we're guessing with basic Windows fonts or basic Mac fonts. And when you type in something, if it's on the computer, it kind of can validate it. You're basically testing and saying, okay, if I type in Lato and make a font like that, will something show up? And if it's not, like LAT, Chrome cannot display that font. But if it's Lato, it knows how to display that. So I hope that answers your questions. That's a kind of a complicated area of the software just because of the nature of fonts. All right, let me scroll down some more. Do custom style sheets from 2.0, can they be brought in over to this version? Kurt is asking that. Yes, when you are bringing in your database from Lutheran Service Builder 2, those are brought over. There is a slight difference though, because within Service Builder 2, these were different presets. So you had style sheets and formats. When you are bringing them over from 2, the combination of those will be brought over depending on what you've used before for exporting. So you're going to see a long list of these, which are combinations of basically styles and formats, which we are now just calling formats as an all-encompassing kind of word. So yes, they come over, they just come over with rather complicated names because it's the combination of those names. When you import your database, you'll see what I mean. But yes, they do come over. All right, let's see. I mean to bold on and off for congregation parts for responsive reading. I've done this on an export, but wonder if there's a way to do that in Service Builder. Not easily within the readings. You can create a custom element, and this is from Carl. We don't have a tool within there for responsive readings, just because there are so many readings in Scripture that could be responsive, and that's not really part of the liturgy when it's meant as a reading, if that makes sense. Certainly, there's lots of responses here that are from Scripture, but if you're taking an actual reading and making it responsive, that is something you'll have to do on your own. Now, if you're doing the same readings regularly, you can go into My Worship Resources, more of an advanced tool that we're not covering today, to do that, especially if you want to reuse it. Otherwise, if it's just kind of a one-time thing, I would still do that within your word processor. All right, I'm going over. Thank you to those of you who are sticking with me. I'll continue to answer a few more questions. Let's see. All right, will LSB2, Philip is asking, will LSB2 bulletins be imported into the new version, or 3? Again, we try to call it the new version rather than 3. If so, and LSB2 is used to produce service bulletins after starting to use the new version and importing 2, will we be able to import those version 2 bulletins into version 3, the new version? Yes, that import is a one-way street from 2 to the online version, but you can do that multiple times. So if you are continuing to use 2 as you get comfortable with the new version, you can continue to re-upload your database and the new things will come across. And that's not just bulletins. That could be my worship resources. It could be whole services. It'll just re-update it, not override anything you've done, but give you the benefit of all your custom stuff, all your changes. All right, we'll go for another minute or so. If you delete a service, is it entirely gone or does it default back to the lectionary service? If you delete a service, it's entirely gone. And when you go to plan a new service, it will default back to the lectionary. So yes, it is completely gone, but when you go to a new one, yes, it'll default back to the lectionary. So I hope that answers your question, Vicki. And Terry's going back to that question about Proverbs. Terry's saying there are 2 options for Old Testament for that Sunday. It's kind of what I was thinking, that was from the lectionary. So thank you very much for answering that. Can the readings be made into 2 columns? Daniel is asking that. That is not part of the software right now. Columns within word processors are a little bit difficult to do just for certain segments of text. It really is better to do something like a table when you're doing just a section of it. So that complicates things. We do not have that option available right now. All right, let's see. Oh, Kurt, so you did join us. Very good. So hopefully you got the answer to that question before. All right, in version 2 did not have to play with scale as a checkbox. Is that no longer available? Then leading to you adding overhead and generating bulletin. I think, let me read that one more time. In version 2 did not have to play with scale. It was a checkbox. Is that no longer available? Then leading to added overhead and generating bulletin. So in bulletin formats, let's go to my default. Under, I believe it is layout. Yep, there we go. Automatically scale music. That will choose whether it scales to the whole width of the screen or the default size of that. So I think that's what you're referring to, but I'm not entirely sure. But that's where we have automatically scale, is under bulletin formats and layout. All right. Can we create our own order of service? Vanya is asking that. Yes, you can. I mentioned that, I didn't show it. It is a little bit more advanced related to my worship resources. But if you change something in here, if you drag and drop or delete elements, let's say you deleted this. When you go to document, you can hit save, and this will save a custom order of service with those changes in place. It won't save all your readings, all your hymns. Those are just placeholders that'll be renewed the next time you use that order of service. So yes, and you can set your name here, and you can see that under my worship resources, my liturgies. All right, well, we are 8 minutes past time. There's a number of questions still in the queue. I'm going to ask our support team to help with those. I may jump in as well. But thank you for being patient as I went over time. Thank you very much for attending. Here's my contact information one last time. I sure hope you learned the basics of Lutheran Service Builder. Thanks for sitting in this first time. I'll work out some of the rough edges for the next ones. We'll post all of these recordings on our website later on. But I appreciate you being here with me today. Please do not hesitate to reach out with any questions. Our support team is also available. One thing I forgot to mention is that you can access our support team within Lutheran Service Builder. Oops, let's see, where did that go? On the calendar view, oh, I think it's not showing up right there. Well, there is generally a little circle in there. I'm not sure where that went. That gets you to our information center. I may have it hidden. based on the presentation. So, all right, well, don't worry, our contact information is on our website, but thanks again and have a great rest of the day.